Hey, thanks, everybody. So, yeah, I'm Alex Wykoff. I'm the head of product at Stakefish, and I've been there just a little bit less than a year. I'm also the creator and organizer of Distributed.camp, and that was a 3-day set of workshops on decentralized technologies. Aside from that, then, I'm also in the Rare Pizzas Pizza Mafia. For those of you who are familiar with that NFT project, I'm the pizza consigliere and a box artist. I'm not a financial analyst, and I'm not a lawyer, so please don't take anything I say as guidance in those directions. So just an ask, please give feedback after the talk. I always appreciate critiques and corrections. Please avoid ad hominems, don't call my dog ugly, that kind of stuff. But I'm here to learn too. So about this content. The intended audience is less technical. If you're familiar with this kind of a graph, this is, if you've been on any ski slopes around here, this is just kind of a little bit of guidance to say that this will be high level. We're not going to get too far into the weeds, but it's just meant as a light comparison of different staking services. None of these observations are diss. They're not meant as a diss. We're really just going to take a look at them as they are. And we're going to focus on non-custodial services. If we're lucky, we'll even take a look at the product arc of one of them. So just a little refresher on Ethereum staking. If you didn't see the talk by Colfax Shelby yesterday, it was brilliant, and I highly recommend you check it out. But if you didn't see it and this is your first time to hear it, then I'll do it for you. One validator requires 32 Ethereum on the beacon chain. That staked Ethereum and the rewards that come with it are locked until withdrawals are implemented after the merge, which is going to be a little time in the future. And overall, validators have this kind of a life cycle to them, right? They're deposited, that's when you have the 32 ETH gathered. Then they're pending as they're joined to the network itself. Later they become active, and then at the tail end they're exited. And after they're exited, that's when you would think about withdrawals. So some thoughts on why people should stake. Of course, it helps to secure the network. The more validators that we have participating, that means lower chances of collusion and manipulation. And the demand is stable, right? If we're all moving to the beacon chain and proof of stake is the way that we're going, demand for staking is going to be consistent. And lastly, it's rewarding. There's a number of different ways that validators actually earn rewards, including slashing. So on the counter side, what are some examples of why people shouldn't stake? The ether is locked, right? From now until withdrawals are enabled, you're going to be waiting a while to get that back out. And it's expensive, right? Operating a validator requires 32 ETH. And lastly, it can be complex, right? Required knowledge is very technical. And I think that Colfax actually did a really great job. I stole this from his presentation yesterday. So thank you so much for this. And many thanks to the production crew for getting this up on YouTube as fast as they did so that I could actually sneak this in. But yeah, it's involved, right? Now, I'd like to take another step back and also look at why does decentralization matter, right? I mean, we take it as a gestalt that maybe that's something everybody should know coming in, but it's worth talking about. When you have a centralized system, you have a centralized point, a single point of failure or manipulation, right? And when you have a decentralized system, you have more robustness in your network, right? And if we see this, it's much harder to take down a network that is spread over geographies and spread over different types of technologies. Just as a little kind of trivia question for the crowd, does anybody know what this particular graphic is? There we go. This gentleman in the front said ARPANET. Brilliant. Yes, that's right. So the thoughts behind these technologies aren't new. And in fact, actually, this diagram comes from a white paper back in 1965. So we've been doing this for a while, thinking this direction. Only now are we making it practical and people are flying into Denver to talk about it, right? Here's another way that decentralization manifests itself, right? I'm showing you both a biological example and a practical example. That we have many different layers in our stack that we can think about. We can have hardware decentralization, many different types of hardware that are actually running the validators, right? We can have different types of transport layers. And if you saw, I think that it was just in the fall of this year, Bitcoin added the Invisible Internet project as one of its routing options into its core protocol. That's actually quite compelling. And then, of course, lastly, we have all kinds of application and presentation layers, which are all the wonderful apps that you all enjoy, right? And not to mention the client software itself. I'm going to make the argument that staking access is a form of decentralization, that you want to have more people participating in staking, not just the people that can afford it from the start. So if we look at when the Beacon chain first launched, the Ethereum price was about $598, $600, and that validator then, the value inside of it was approximately $19,000, right? A year later, the Ethereum price is $4,500, and the total cost that it would take to get a validator up and off the ground is equivalent to a suburban house, right? And then, as of this morning, I did my best to get it close to the number. This isn't like a live trade number, so don't trade off of this. But it's still quite high, right? This is beyond the limit for a lot of average folks, right? And just to try and kind of drive it home, here's an example from Stakefish's deposit contract. So if you've ever used Stakefish in the past, you would know that you could deposit 32 ETH and we'd run a validator on your behalf. Just tracking the action on that smart contract that manages it, you can see that the total deposited Ethereum tapered over time, right? And if you look at the transactions by amount, because we allow you to spin up multiple validators in one call, the vast majority of them were at the 32 ETH level. So what does that tell us? It tells us that there's a natural limit to the amount of people that have 32 ETH available at any one point in time. And it also tells us that by and large, there's a lot more folks with 32 ETH or less, right? So for this particular presentation, and with all that background out of the way, I'm going to talk about staking options for less than 32 ETH. And it just really drives toward this access issue. First, I'm going to look at liquid or tokenized staking, and that includes Lido, Stakewise, and RocketPool. There are others out there. These are just kind of the three I picked. And then we'll look at kind of non-tokenized or vanilla staking, and that's what Stakefish does. So first up with Lido. You exchange your ETH for staked ETH. And if you want to get it back out, you would have to go to a third-party liquidity pool, so something like Curve, Balancer, etc. Now what Lido does under the covers is a lot more complex than that, but from the participant's perspective, right, all that you really did at the front of it is the exchange. The staked ETH rebases on a daily 24-hour basis to reflect the Ethereum staking rewards. So just holding it means that you benefit. Your amount of staked ETH will go up just from holding it. And staked ETH can be used in many DeFi apps, which is actually pretty cool. If we look under the covers, the initial set of their node operators, there's 22 of them. They were selected by Lido. And for full disclosure, Stakefish is one of those operators. And then if we look at their client distribution, this has been a hot topic lately, right? We can see that they have a little bit less than 50% Prism usage. And again, if we're talking about decentralization, knowing about the amount of operators and knowing about the clients that they use is also important. So next we'll talk about Stakewise. In Stakewise's case, you can exchange ETH for stake ETH2, SETH2, but you receive your rewards in RETH2. And that's kind of compelling because you're able to have one thing that is kind of your basis, like your collateral, and then another thing that is your rewards on the other side. And so if you wanted to take the RETH2, sell it for ETH, and then restake, you could do that, or you could actually, just kind of not put all of your collateral into different liquidity plays. So that reduces some risk of impermanent loss. And then for Stakewise, this is under review, so don't take this as gospel, but it does seem that like their Prism usage is above average. And their node operators are Stakewise employees. So to compare that versus Lido, for example, right, they have multiple different operators under the cover, and in Stakewise's case, they have one set of operators, which is themselves. Next up, we have RocketPool. And RocketPool is another really popular choice. You can exchange your ETH as low as 0.1 ETH for RETH. And the RocketPool will group fractional ETH with operator collateralized nodes, and I'll talk about what that means in a second. Rewards are then given out to participants when the RETH is redeemed for ETH. So it doesn't rebase the way that Lido does, and it also doesn't separate the staked ETH versus the rewards in the way that Stakewise does. Their node operators are permissionless. So where Lido kind of made their original choice of like who's going to operate, RocketPool actually has like this really interesting mechanism that it gets operators to come in and participate. So what they do is, as an operator, you'll put in 16 ETH plus an RPL token as your kind of collateral and saying, I will do a good job as an operator. and then the users exchanged ETH will fill in the rest. And their Prism usage is quite low, which is really great. So just to kind of summarize on liquid or tokenized staking, there's some thoughts about assumptions you have to make about the token value and the liquidity, right? Because in every one of those cases, you're making some kind of an exchange, and then you're thinking to do some kind of a DeFi play afterwards, right? And so, what's going to happen inside of those scenarios? You're required to interact with those liquidity pools to exit if you're going to try and do anything kind of pre-merge, pre-withdrawals. And your DeFi options require more active management, right? You can't just make a play and then sit and walk away. So now I'll talk about what Stakefish does. You can stake with as little as 0.1 ETH. The Ethereum is deposited into a contract. When the deposit contract reaches 32 ETH, then a validator instance is spun up. So from there, that's it. You're staking. There's no exchanges. There's nothing else that's done. Your rewards and your staked ETH will sit in there until withdrawals are enabled, right? So you'll get your original stake back plus a percentage of the validator rewards minus our commission. The node operators are Stakefish employees, and the gas might be more expensive than other options. Participants will, of course, have to wait a while before they can withdraw and receive their rewards, right? We have to wait post-merge, post-withdrawals. But as you can see, our Prism usage is also considerably low. So these are all factors to consider, right? Who's operating the actual validators? What are you actually doing with your staked ETH? And what kind of clients are running, right? And here's the comparison as a glance, right? You can see roughly how much Prism client is being used on any one of these offers, what the relative commission rates are. The commission rate on Rocket Pool changes on a regular basis. I checked it this morning. It could be different by this afternoon. So thankfully, we have a little bit of time left, so I'll give you a look under the hood and kind of talk about why did Stakefish choose to do it this other way. So for a review, we saw that the amount of deposited ETH was tapering over time, and the overwhelming majority of what was being deposited was at the lowest possible amount that you could do, which was 32 ETH, right? So how do we encourage more participation? Pardon me. We want to lower the barrier and let people less than 32 ETH to stake. It's kind of obvious, but it's just worth saying out loud. So we did an exploration. Initially, we brought on a technical advisor, and they reached out to some folks in the Ethereum Foundation and elsewhere. And their suggestion was, let's do this out in public. Let's do this with the community as a whole and make an EIP. And we thought through this. Okay, well, what are some business models? How is this going to work? How can we make it so that it's incentivized positively for all the users, the operators, et cetera, right? And what kind of complications would come up? Should we do tokens or not? And how can we make this as simple as we can, right? Things are complicated enough in the staking world. How can we make this, from a UX perspective, as easy as can be? So this was our first pass. We had this idea that we could do a pool list, and it's very similar in a way to Rocket Pool, where you would have a whole list of different operators that could come in and say, this is our commission, this is what we're doing, and you could choose to participate in it. And so, right, pool party, let's do this, right? This is a great idea. Well, we took it back to our advisors, and they said, no, actually, you need to think more carefully. Who would be the originator of that relationship? What kind of terminology would they use? What are the different kind of risk that Stakefish is being exposed to? And this is especially thinking inside of like a regulatory aspect. So we decided to bring this into an in-house project rather than a community project. And we refined our UI over time to make it as easy as we possibly could make it. We even had a little POAP that you could get when you tried it out. We had it out on the GoReally testnet, and you could try it out from Thanksgiving to Christmas of this last year. And we ultimately shipped in January. So if you go to stake.fish right now, you can see it. The option is available. Hopefully it's as easy as you think it could be. From the testnet, we were able to get over 700 people to participate. And we even had a real innovation with an auto faucet that we created. So we were noticing that testers were having a problem because you have to go to the faucet and make a social media post and all this other stuff. And we said, why don't we just give them the test ETH for showing up? So if you showed up and you had 0 GoReally ETH in your wallet, and we never gave you any before, We would just dump some into your wallet so that you could test it out. And I think that that was quite helpful. Overall, I'm super proud of what the team accomplished. However, I think we took a wrong turn. So what could we have done differently? When we noticed that the risk was going to occur to Stakefish individually in the operator as coordinator role, that was really the right time to take a pause and bring it back to the community and make a proposal, right? This is just me thinking in hindsight. So as the next steps, I wanted to bring this up. Obviously, there's a desire. We have so many different options that exist already for how to stake under 32 ETH. It makes sense for us to open a discussion and take these examples as well as others and offer a proposal for an enhancement to Ethereum. And so I would recommend, and it just so happens that right as I was putting this presentation together, there were a few of the different things that hit my radar. Number one is look at the distributed validator specs. This is something that has come up recently, and there are some really great examples in SSV. Of course, visit the ETH Staker community and chat with everybody else that's in the room here and out in the hallways, right? So in summary, more individual staking means more activity. They're paying attention to the fundamentals of our ecosystem, right? Because we need validators to operate for everything else. We want as many people as possible participating in that, so they're thinking at that level. And that will create a healthier blockchain. Thanks. So you can find me at Alex_Wykoff on Twitter or alexwykoff.com.
We have probably time for one or two questions.
Yeah, that'd be great.